Okay, there we go. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We are streaming live to Facebook at this moment. I'm Holly Kim, your Lake County Treasurer, and just a couple of operating rules. When you come into the Zoom, we will be muting you. And like I said, I will be also turning off video if you have your video on, only because we are streaming this to Facebook Live. And I don't want to show not only your face, but also the back of your home and to respect your privacy. One of the things we're hoping to accomplish is to have a clean copy of this recording so that we can share it going forward as well. And so we ask that if you have any questions, please put them into the chat and I will moderate them in at the end. Again, if there's any specific questions to your home, one of the things that we will request is that you contact your local township assessor, and we will be sharing the link that shows all the township assessors, their contact information, and you can contact them for your home specifically. But if you have any general questions, you can definitely put those in the chat and I'll moderate them in. That being said, we're really excited to have this session here today. I know many of you have received the blue notices, and so, a lot of questions come to mind like, what is this? What are these numbers? And so with that, I'm very glad to host this session with two of our members from the Warren Township Assessor's Office. We have the assessor himself, Charlie Mullin. Hi.
Hello.
And then we have Chesney, his deputy, as well, over at the Warren Township Chief Deputy Assessor. Hey, Chesney.
Hello.
All right, so with that, let's have you take the screen over and go ahead.
So in terms of the order of events for tonight, we're actually going to attempt to squeeze quite a bit into a 1-hour session. So if I'm speaking a little bit too fast, you'll have the opportunity to play it on review. Or if you have follow-up questions, you can always give us a call, talk to Charlie, myself, or anyone in our office. We're going to start with Holly giving us a little bit of an overview of the property tax cycle in Illinois. She'll speak to the budget and levy process, then how to read your tax bill. From there, Charlie and I are going to talk about how to read your assessment notice, how to review your assessment using the public-facing website provided by the Lake County Assessor's Office, and then if you feel an appeal is necessary, how to file an appeal using the Smartfile application. At the end, we might have time for some general Q&A. But again, just to reiterate what Holly mentioned already, anything specific to your property is a conversation best had on an individual basis and not in this group setting.
Okay, I've actually popped the link into our Zoom chat for your local assessors, and I'm doing that for Facebook as well. And so if you're following along and you want to click that and just bookmark it, you can go to that page later.
And Chesney did drop in the instructions on the appeal instructions that we updated on our website too. So those are also in the chat box.
I will be dropping them in the chat box periodically because anyone who doesn't have access, you won't have access to anything put in the chat box prior to joining the Zoom session. But for the purpose of the recording, assessor.warrentownship.net, you have an opportunity to look at documents and resources there, and the 2023 appeal filing instructions will be found on our website in that spot. So to begin, a tax bill is made up of 3 parts. You have the assessed value of your property. Then you subtract any exemptions you might be eligible for. Then you have what's called your taxable equalized assessed value. And that's multiplied times the tax rate. That will give you your actual tax bill amount. So something that's really important to understand is that I like to explain this as there are 2 trains on different tracks and they're moving towards the same destination at the same time, but they really aren't crossing over until they get really, really close to that end point. And so what you can see here is we are identifying which part of the property tax cycle different parts of your bill fall under. So you have the assessed value and exemptions, and those fall under the assessment and valuation track And at the same time as we're determining assessed values and you're receiving your assessment notice and you're applying for exemptions, at the same time, all of the various taxing bodies that levy on your property are determining what they're going to ask for in terms of their budget and their levy, and that's what's going to drive the tax rate. So if we move on to the next slide.
Chesney's patting her
I'll
head
take
and rubbing
over.
her stomach at the same time because she's doing the slides and she's speaking.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So Holly, you were going to speak to this tax process.
Yeah, so I love this graphic because it's kind of like the cycle of life for taxes, right? The Schoolhouse Rocks version minus the singing. So when people think about taxes, they really think of my office, the treasurer's office. But what they don't realize is there's many offices involved in what becomes that tax bill, right? The assessors work on the assessed values. But let's start at the upper left corner up here, the taxing districts. So your tax bill is actually made up of all these local taxing bodies. They're your park district, your library, your schools. There's actually no state of Illinois on your tax bill. It's all your local bodies that provide support to you and your town. And so they have a tentative budget, right? And so with that budget comes public hearings, public meetings. I used to be a trustee in the village of Mullin. We have these public meetings where we talk, debate over what the levy is and what we want to include in it. So at the end of it all, there is a separate public meeting. Yep, you're hovering over the right one, where it's the ultimate. And it's like, here is the levy that we've put together and that we've discussed, and this is what we're planning to pass. And that not only gets published, but it gets announced to the community. And once it passes with the board majority vote, that's where the arrow goes down and it becomes the tax levy that's filed at the county clerk's office. And Chesney said that that's happening as a moving train. The same exact time, there's this second moving train, which is the assessor's office. And as she had mentioned, you know, this is the time that they're evaluating the assessed values. And then, you know, if there are appeals, that the Board of Review is hearing them. And so what I'm really here to say is all of this aggregates to the bottom right, which is me, the county treasurer's office. And what many people don't realize is by the time they call my office and they go, hey, I want to appeal these taxes. Well, you actually cannot appeal these taxes because we're 1 year in arrears. These are all numbers that were done the year before. And so that's why it's very important that you understand the process, but then also know when, the timing for anything is. All of it aggregates on the tax bill, as we'll see in a slide forward. Okay, so here, this is just kind of a Cliff Notes version of your tax bill. It's a sample. Clearly, this is John Doe's house in Gurnee. And then all the stuff from the taxing bodies that was filed at the clerk's office, you're going to see on the bottom left, which is that purple area that says tax rate. So it says right there, College of Lake County. It lists all the pensions, all the schools from elementary to junior high and all of that. And on the right-hand side is the column for the assessors section, which is the assessed values. Everything you see in your blue notice comes on this tax bill next year, right? So that's what you're seeing on the right-hand side, including the discounts, which are the exemptions. So all of it aggregates, right? And literally this office is tasked to be the Lake County collector, and we collect. But what you can't see in this one, but you will see on your tax bill, I'm just pointing it out that it's there, where it says assessed value. Before it says building assessed value, home improvement, all these other things, there's like little plus signs and little minus signs. So they're actually a math equation that you can follow along. All the way at the bottom where it's bold says total amount due. This one shows that they've paid their taxes. So it's actually the field right above it. But it's saying like equals the total amount your taxes are, but you can literally line by line follow this math equation. It's a very transparent process. Every taxing body down to the 1 cent, it's listed on what goes where, right? We might not know where things go like statewide or federally, or, that's not my wheelhouse, but my wheelhouse is a tax bill. And I'm telling you, these lines right here are exactly it down to the 1 cent. So you know which taxing body is going to. All right, go ahead. All right, you want to take it from here?
Sure. And do you want to take over the waiting room? We've still got people coming.
Yes, I will take over the waiting room.
Okay,
All right.
perfect. So we're kind of going to start from the end so that we can get back to what we're really here today, and that's talk about the assessment notice. But in terms of the tax rates, it is the final part of the property tax equation. The tax rates are driven by the levy request for each taxing body. Basically, in a nutshell, what happens in the tax extension department of the county clerk's office is they take all of the money that's been requested by a taxing body, that's called their levy, and they divide it by the total assessed value of all the properties that taxing body levies on, and that will give you an individual tax rate. And as you can see here, each of these rates are determined individually. And then for your property, all of these individual rates will be added up to get that total tax rate that's applied to your property. Moving on, we have exemptions, and we always throw this out there because no matter how much we talk about this, we still have people that come in that don't realize that they're eligible for exemptions. So read more about this on our website or the county website, but there are general homestead exemptions. You have to own and live in the property on January 1st. Senior homestead, senior means 65 or better in terms of how the Illinois legislature views you. Disabled veterans and disabled persons exemptions and more. If you have any questions on exemptions, contact your local township assessor or check it out on the county website and make sure you have all the exemptions that you're eligible for. If you're unsure what you might be eligible for and you're in Warren Township, if you come in our office, we will absolutely do a full review of your property to ensure that you have every exemption that you're eligible for.
And for 2023, those exemption amounts are going up too. So the general homestead exemption is going from 6,000 to 8,000, and the senior homestead exemption is going from 5,000 to 8,000. So you really want to make sure you have those.
I also want to add, there are people who call our property tax office, and, we hate to ask because it's hard to guess based off their voice, but we'll be like, if you don't mind answering, how old are you? And we've had people who are like 80 and they've never had the senior homestead exemption. You can get it when you're 65 years old, but it's not automatic. It is something you have to go sign up for. So if you know anyone, like my dad, when he turned 65, I immediately drove him to his assessor and I was like, happy birthday, Dad, hop in the car, let's go.
Well, as much as we'd love to see you on your birthday, you don't have to come on your birthday. But for years, it's been in our township newsletter. It's on every tax bill. It's on every assessment notice. It's on the website, and people are still getting missed. So at this point, it really is essential. It needs to be word of mouth. It needs to be someone letting them know, like, hey, check this out, see if you're eligible for these exemptions, because we've done as much as we can do on our end. We continue that outreach. We're not stopping, but word of mouth can be really meaningful, and I've seen it happen. So, ask about it, make sure everyone knows about these exemptions. So my favorite part of the property tax bill is the part that we handle in our office. And I know that might seem weird, but we take great pride in the work that we do as township assessors. And when Charlie took over this office, he pointedly decided that we were going to be more customer service focused, that we were going to be a highly educated office, and that we were going to be completely transparent. And that's what, that's the goal. That's what we're working towards. Not that we're completely there, but we're working towards that. And educating the public is actually a big part of our mission, so that you understand you might not like your tax bill amount, but it's important that you understand where it comes from, how to review it, and then what your rights are as a property owner. There are many moving parts in the property tax cycle. The assessment is just one part. And what the assessment ultimately is your share of the overall property tax burden. The overall tax burden is a heavy one here in Illinois, and in Lake County in particular. But the assessed value is your share of that larger burden. So We're on to the statutory level of assessment and fair cash value. So the Illinois statute gives us a directive that we need to assess all property within our township at a fair cash value as of January 1st, 2023 for this year. Our level of assessment for Lake County is 1/3 of fair cash value, or 33.33%. So how do we do that? A really quick and brief overview, and if you have more questions or want to peek behind the curtain on this, I'm happy to show you what that is. But what we do is perform a market adjusted cost approach. So for all the properties in Warren Township, if we stick with residential, because that's kind of our focus for this presentation, we value all of the land for all of the residential property. And then we look at a neighborhood and we'll say, what sales do we have from the last 3 years in this assessment neighborhood? So for January 2023 value, we're looking at sales from 20, 21, and 22. For each property that's sold, we look at the sale price and we subtract our land value, and then we say, hey, they paid whatever's left for the building. Then we compare that to the cost to build that property new, less depreciation. And we do that for all of the properties that we're valuing. And for each individual sale, we have what we call a sales ratio. A ratio is a comparison. So we're comparing a sale price to the cost to build the property. And we do that for each individual sales. Once we're done, we look at what the median value is for a given assessment neighborhood. And that's what we use as a market adjustment to adjust the values of all of the properties in that neighborhood. So we're taking a small subset. In this instance, it's the properties that sold, and we're comparing the sale to the land value plus the cost to build, using that information to value all of the properties within the assessment neighborhood. Looks like you wanted to add something, Char?
No, you're right on. That was a great explanation. Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that is an oversimplification, but just so you understand, it's very different from what you might see in a single property appraisal, where an appraiser would come out, they'd come in your house, they'd measure every room, and then they would pick 3 properties that recently sold. The scope of what they're doing is much smaller. We have a much broader scope. Then they're going to say, well, how do these sales compare to your property? And they'll make adjustments so that those sales properties, if it was more similar to your property, it would have sold for this. And that's how they value your property. That's very labor intensive approach. What we do in terms of the mass appraisal, we can value a larger quantity of properties in a smaller period of time. Mm-hmm. Once we've done all of our work in terms of valuing the property, equalization is an essential part of the property tax cycle. And we have that, as I mentioned, statutory level of assessment of 33.33%. The county assessor then will take a look at our values and say, hey, did they meet 33.33% in terms of where their median or actual level of assessment is? And if we didn't, they will apply an equalization factor. So this year for Warren Township, our equalization factor was a 1, which meant that we did hit that middle mark that we were required to in our quadrennial reassessment year.
Yeah, we had a tentative factor of an 8.74, and then we went into each individual neighborhood and applied it where it needed to go, and the end result was we hit the 1. So we essentially raised the whole township by 8.74%.
But that wasn't 8.74% across the board, because we had some neighborhoods that needed to come down, and we had some neighborhoods that were requiring adjustments in excess of that 8.74%. But briefly, that's what equalization is. I see a comment that I can answer quickly, a couple of these comments. So the first is, how do you determine cost to build? So if you looked recently, you may have gotten a revision in your homeowner's insurance if you own your property. And they actually use what's called replacement cost new, and they use what's called cost schedules. So for every part of the building that you're valuing, there's a cost in the cost schedule associated with it. Do you have a basement? There's a cost for that. Or is it crawl? A lower cost for that. Slab, a lower cost for that. There's costs based on exterior construction. For our township, there are only two that we differentiate between if a property is brick or if it's what we consider to be a frame, which would include wood or aluminum shingles or anything like that. There's costs for each bathroom fixture, cost for finishing in the basement, living space, detached garages, whole buildings. So we use cost schedules that determine the cost to build all of these properties, and that takes into account indirect and direct costs. And if you have more questions about that, I can show you a little bit how that works. And later in the presentation, I'm actually going to show you how to find the cost schedule, the cost ladder for your individual property on the county website, assuming that you are in a township that uses the Tyler system.
Yeah, we'll bring up a property record card, so it'll have that ladder on it, so.
Okay, so now let's dive into your assessment notice. So what you're going to find is you have your property index number. We'll call that a PIN number. So if you call our office, this is the number we're going to ask for, a PIN number. This is going to be the property address, whereas the information here is what's listed in terms of where you're having it mailed. Many individuals do not have their assessment notice or tax bill mailed to their property address. This is the mailing label. It will also show the PIN number. And then here we also have your taxpayer of record. In the middle of your assessment notice, you are going to find your final value for 2022. This was an assessment of $99,990, so around $300,000 market value. And then your revised assessment for 2023. This is the full fair cash value. So $396,630 is the same as the assessed value of $132,197. You'll also see the reason for the change. Here, you're going to find information about who your township assessor is. As I mentioned before, for some reason they didn't put it here, but our factor was 1, and we're pretty proud of that. So I wish they'd printed it on the notice. It took a lot of work to get there, and it was a group effort, but we're pretty happy to have gotten there. So if you're in the Township of Warren, then you have an equalization factor of 1.
What that means is the township assessor's valuation and the equalized essay about valuation are exactly the same. So if you look at the 2023, they're the same value there. That's where that 1 is. So the number that we posted carried forward.
And someone asked if they could get a copy of the assessment notice. I'm not sure if they do that at the county level, but every single piece of information that's displayed on your assessment notice is available on the county website, and we're ultimately headed in that direction. And so I'll show you exactly where to find it, how to use it, and how to navigate that website. One of the great things that's happened is since I started in this industry, there's been a big push for transparency. Obviously, things like a website make that easier. But what also sometimes happens is when so much information is displayed, it can be a little bit overwhelming in terms of finding the information you need. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Now, the first thing I want you to do, and I hope I remember to say this again, when you start to review your property assessment, is verify that all of the information that you see regarding your property characteristics is going to be correct. So there is some information that's displayed here, but that's not everything. So when we get onto the website and you start looking at your property characteristics, it's essential that the information we have for your property is accurate, because most of what you're going to see is driving your individual assessed value. For Warren Township, the final filing date is October 2nd, 2023. All appeals have to be filed online. I do not suggest waiting for the final filing date because it's an online appeal application. I don't trust that everything will go right at the last minute. And if you wait till 11:30 on October 2nd, there's going to be no one at any office to answer your call. So if you feel that you need to appeal, please be advised of what the individual filing deadline is for your township, and make sure that you don't wait till the last minute. That way, if something goes wrong, you've got enough time to turn around and call someone and get it corrected and get it fixed. Because if you don't have it in by the deadline, you will not have standing for an appeal. So it's a statutory deadline. It's essential that if you're filing an appeal, you have it filed in a timely manner. So this is the fun part. We're going to go into a live demonstration of how to review your assessment. We're going to look at reviewing your fair cash value and talk about the comparable selection process, what you might want to look at, the dates of sale, what units of comparison are relevant. Typically for fair cash value, you'll look at the total sale price and the sale price per square foot. You'll see that on the grid as AGLA. AGLA stands for above ground living area. So it doesn't include any square footage that's below grade. So if you have, for example, a tri-level property, a portion of your living area is partially below grade. That's not included in the above ground living area. However, it is included in terms of there's value associated with that. There's value that's seen in the marketplace, and there's also value that's built into our model.
Mhm.
In terms of equity, we'll talk a little more about neighborhood stratification. So typically the board review would like to see you using comparable properties that have been determined to be like properties. And one major consideration point is going to be the neighborhood that has been assigned by your township assessor. They'll look at different units of comparison for an equity appeal. Typically in this case, they'll look at land and building value separately. So they'll look at the land value per square foot of land or the building value per square foot of building, or AGLA. Ultimately, we'll talk about when to file an appeal, and I'll walk you through how to utilize Smartfile to file an assessment appeal. So any questions before I jump into the live demonstration?
Sure, there are a bunch of questions that are in the chat. Some of them we can leave for later if they're too specific, but there's a couple. And I feel like usually I would read them all in, but since you're like a power user, I know that Chesney can. Chesney was not only clicking and presenting, she was reading the chat at the same time earlier. So she's like Bert from Mary Poppins with the drum, the cymbal knees, and the kazoo, like all at the same time. So
I do
Okay,
believe.
so I can answer the question about the equalized assessed value.
can you repeat the question for those on
So the
Facebook?
question is, if the equalized assessed value is the township assessed value and exemptions reduce the tax impact, how can the 2023 equalized assessed valuation be greater than the 2023 township assessor's valuation? So the 2023 equalized assessed value has an equalization factor applied by the county assessor's office. And all of those equalization factors, which are specific to each township, are listed on the county website. So you can see what the equalization factor is for each individual property. And I'll show you where to find that. I'm going to share my second screen here. So this is, if you go to assessor.lakecountyil.gov, you'll get here, or if you just go to lakecountyil.gov, you can look for the assessor's office, and this is their homepage. From here, if you hover under over assessments, and then you select equalization factors, you can see what the final multiplier is for almost every township. Shields is still pending, but you can see for Warren here, we have a 1, and you can identify what the factor is for your specific township. Now, no tax bills have been created yet for the 2023 equalized assessed value. And what will happen is when you get an individual bill, the exemptions are removed, you're left with the taxable equalized assessed value. The equalized assessed value and the taxable equalized assessed value, those are 2 different values. So that's just important to remember there.
And you'll see those exemptions come off in the lower right-hand side of the tax bill, but you won't see them come off on that blue notice.
Correct. So this is the starting point for reviewing your property assessment. So you get here, tax.lakecountyil.gov. Oh, we got people coming in still, that's fun. And so typically, if you have your assessment notice or you know your address, you can do a basic search. Now, do not fill out every field, because it's not going to find your property that way. If you have your PIN number, just popping in your PIN number here is going to be the quickest way to get there. If you have to search for your address, I suggest inputting the numerical portion and the street name only, and then maybe you include your township and searching to see if you can find the property that way. But don't try to pop in your owner name and your billing name and address, because it would need to match perfectly, and that's very difficult to do. So
It's
for the
true.
purpose
The
of
less,
this,
the better on this page.
yeah. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I have a pre-selected property index number. Now, here's a word of warning. Some of this functionality does not work well on a mobile device. You can get information, but in terms of at this point trying to select this property, it gets to be very difficult on a mobile device, and Smartfile does not function on a mobile device as well. So it is best to do this on a desktop. That's my recommendation, and I'm hoping that's something that will change in the future. But that's a limitation from the software vendor, not from Lake County and not from our township. So once you input the property information, it will default, and this will give you some general information. You've got the property address. And remember, I talked about an assessment neighborhood. This is the really, really important thing that you want to pay attention to here, is your assessment neighborhood. So all of the properties that you've been valued with are going to have the same assessment neighborhood number, and some various characteristics about the property, including a brief legal. Now, before I move on to trying to look at sales and that type of thing, over here, don't let this scare you. There's good information over here on the reports. So the one that I think is really important is the residential property record card. So first you select it, and we are tax year 2023, and we'll click go. Now, if you ever have problems with it not generating a report, it might be because of the tax year. So if I wanted the most recent tax bill, I would need to change this back to 2022. And everything would change. So we'll go back to 23. So just beware this tax year, because this system is year-based. And so your property is going to have a separate profile and value for each year. So just beware of that tax year issue. So you select residential PRC, which is a property record card, and click go. And it's a little time consuming. It takes a little bit of time, so just be patient. Don't click it multiple times, because you don't know where you're going to end up if you just keep clicking. Whenever I'm training, I have to tell them, stop clicking.
That's literally what my mom does.
Register.
I'll hear it in the back. I'm like, Mom, is that you going to, I'm like, you just do it once, But sometimes there's a pop-up blocker too. So you have to turn it
Yeah,
off.
So this is your property record card. And some important information, you want to make sure that all of these characteristics here are accurate. Not very often that you're going to see an error in your land size. If there is, call us. But more often than not, this is what you want to make sure is accurate. So we can see that this is a 2-story property and it's a townhome. We've got the year built and the effective year. If a property has an addition that was put on, it might have an effective year that's different from the year it was built, because it would be a combining of the original year built and then when the new structure was put on. Your above ground living area. Assessors measure from the exterior of the property, as do appraisers. That is a standard in the industry. It's actually all of the measurement standards for property. They all point to exterior measurements, just so you're aware. So if you go into your house and start measuring all your rooms, that's not going to add up to the square footage, but it should match if you were to get an appraisal or something along those lines, exterior measurements. In Warren Township, this wood siding, that means that you're frame construction and you're not brick. So we only differentiate between brick and frame. And then you have the quality grade and condition, basement type, basement area is really important. And then if you have a rec room area, any finished basements in our township will be entered as a rec room. In other townships, you might see it as either finished basement or as a rec room.
mm-hmm.
The number of bathrooms, and what's really important about the number of bathrooms is the number of total fixtures, whether or not the property has air conditioning, fire. This is a fireplace, wood burning fireplace. Okay, that's what that WBFP stands for, and the number of openings. And then you've got porches, pools, you've got attached and detached garages and basement garages. So basically, you want to take a look at this and ensure that the information that's being used to assess your property is accurate. The back of the property record card is going to be where you can find information about the cost of your property. So we call this the cost ladder. This software calls it the dwelling computation, but basically you can see where the various values are arriving from. So plumbing, so this is the value for the number of bathrooms. This is the value for the basement, and so on and so forth. I don't want to spend a lot of time here. I just want you to understand how the valuation works and make sure that you understand you have access to this information. Now, we end up here with a replacement cost new less depreciation right here, 183,508. And then we have that's kind of like the cost to build it. And then we're adjusting for the fact the property is not brand new. Depreciation works in steps. So for example, you might have homes built from 1990 to 1995 on this step, and then you drop down at 96. So you might be just 1 year apart, but you might hit those steps in a different manner. So just remember that with depreciation. And then when I talked about our market adjustment factor, that's the dwelling factor. This is what's adjusting against all of the comparable property sales. So based on this dwelling factor, this home is worth more than it would have cost to build it, less depreciation. So this is a 31% increasing factor on the replacement cost new less depreciation. And I know that's a lot, but you can watch this again. If I were to summarize this, make sure that your building characteristics are correct, because for every building characteristic you see on the property record card, there is an associated cost, and our values aren't going to be accurate if we don't have accurate characteristic data. So once you verify that your property characteristics are correct, and if they're not, you can indicate that they are not in an appeal as well. And we'll talk about that when we get to that screen. Now you can start to do the analyzing process. So you've got a couple of options here. One option is you can just choose neighborhood sales. This isn't really going to tell you much. It doesn't tell you if it was a foreclosure or a good sale. It just gives you all the neighborhood sales. You don't know if this is 1-story or 2-story property. So that's not really my favorite way to analyze this information. So I'm just going to hit the back button. I'm going to go back to your property profile. And I'm going to choose create comparables, because this is where you can really pick a couple of properties and analyze how do they stack up. So we're first going to look at this from the perspective of fair cash value or market value. When you open this comparable search, if you wanted to just look at other properties assessments, you could stay on this radio button, but we're going to look at it from the perspective of sales first, because there's less data, so it's going to be easier to see what we're doing here. So I'm going to click sales. Now, all of this information is pre-populated, but you can change it. So I know that this assessment neighborhood is they're all going to be townhomes. So this one doesn't really matter. But if you're having trouble finding comps, play around with, getting rid of one of these. You can just get rid of the townhome. Or if you're not finding things in your assessment neighborhood, you can tighten up your size range, and then you can search by distance. But if you're searching by neighborhood, you probably don't need to search by distance, but you can do both. This is up to you. You can use it however you want. I'm just trying to give you some tips and tricks. So in this instance, I'm just going to delete the year built, because I know these were all built at a similar time. And I want a little less data, so I'm just going to change this to 2021. And so once you have this in here, you click this search button in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's thinking. Once it's done thinking, now we have quite a few sales that we can look at, and we can choose which ones we want to compare to. One thing that I do want to point out is everything here is showing up as a WD. If you see a sale pull up and there's like no price, or this says like a QC, that'd be a quick claim deed. This is going to pull up every transfer. So not every transfer of ownership has a value attached to it. So if it's a quick claim deed, you won't see a purchase price associated with that change in ownership. And if you see something like an SW, that means a special warranty deed. And so that might be a property transfer that doesn't meet the definition of market value or fair cash value. It might be a distress sale. So just so you know, you want to make sure that you're using arm's length transaction. Now, one thing you might not realize by just looking at this is you actually can sort by just clicking this button. So I like to do that. Because I like to find the properties that are the most similar to the subject property. And one of the main driving forces in an area like our township is going to be similar square footage. So I know the subject property is 1614 square feet. So look, I've got all of these property sales that are 1614 square feet. So I'm going to go ahead and just select those. Now, before I move on to the next page and we start analyzing these comparables, I do want to let you know, take a minute to read the Lake County Board of Review rules, but in relation to an appeal based on fair cash value, where you're looking at comparable property sales, the Board of Review is trying to establish a value as of January 1st, 2023. So the Board of Review will give the most weight to sales that occurred closest to that date, which means if there's 10 sales in 2020, 10 in 2021, and 10 in 2022, and they're all good comparable, the Board of Review is going to give the most weight to those sales that occurred in 2022. And for those of you that are like, well, those are going to be higher. Yes, they are, but they did the same thing in 2008 when those sales were lower. Charlie and I have been here since before that. Charlie's been here a long time. So it works the other direction as well. For our analysis, we are looking at all 3 years of sales. Once you take it to the board of review level, they're looking at a January 1st, 23 value. So they are going to weight the 2022 closings more heavily. If you're in a situation where there isn't good data, it might be looked at a little differently. I'm trying to cover 80%, the rules, what most people are going to find here. There's always going to be exceptions. So just, understand that context here as we move forward. Click compare. And don't worry, it looks like it just went blank, but it didn't. It just takes a little bit of time until it will populate. And so what you can see here is now we've got our comparable properties that we selected, and we're going to analyze them. Now, in this case, these are townhomes. It makes this a little easier to do, so it's good for illustration purposes. But right here, I can tell there's going to be some differences. So our subject property has a basement. Comp 1 has a walkout basement. A walkout basement does value higher than a basement, but comparables 2, 3, and 4, those properties are on crawl. So they are inferior to the subject property. So we would assume that their purchase price would be lower than if the subject property had sold. Now from this page, you can also print this, so you can print it out and write on it if you want to. And if you're looking at this and you don't like one of these comparables and you're like, oh, this one is not good, you can click this delete button here and the grid will right away repopulate without that comparable. So right from this screen, you can remove a comparable property. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here.
There was a question in the chat about sales after January 2023. So the board will look at those sales after 2023, but we did not look at any of the 2023 sales when we were coming up with our values. So you can use them as comparables to show on either side of that January 1st date.
Okay, so now we are going to kind of look at the units of comparison. I'm going to teach you real quickly, hopefully, how to analyze these comparable property sales. And I want to point out, so for comparable sales, we had sales that were in the same assessment neighborhood. Now, if you do not, you might need to go outside of the neighborhood. But in this instance, they're in the same comparable neighborhood. So if you don't find sales in your neighborhood, what do? Well, my suggestion is you start small, right? You start in your neighborhood, a similar house. And then if you don't catch anything, you cast a wider net. So then you might look at a range of square footage and a distance to your property, but still the same style. If you're a 2-story, you want to look at another 2-story property. And you keep expanding your search parameters until you've caught at least 3 comparable sales. It's kind of the magic number that you would want to submit would be 3 is really the minimum that you'd want to submit. So even if you have one that you think is perfect, 1 is not enough. The board of review won't make a change on just 1 comparable property sale. 1 sale doesn't make a market. You need at least 3. Even if you have your favorite, you need a couple that will support or bracket the value established by your favorite comparable. So you're going to take a look at the assessment neighborhood. For the most part, you don't want to cross township boundaries. There might be an exception where it would be okay, but you really don't want to go outside of the township because of the difference in taxing bodies and tax burdens. And also a significant market driver in Lake County, Illinois, is going to be what school district a property is. So you definitely should try to stay in the same school district because people are very concerned about that when they're purchasing a home. So you want your comparable to have the same market conditions that your property would have on the market. If you've had to go a distance, that's going to show here. And then we also have the land square footage. If you're in a condo, you won't have a land square footage, but you do have a land value, and it's based on your percent of interest in the common elements. If you read your legal description, it will be listed there. So you'll have more than likely a gross value associated with for your land value if you're in a condo or a townhome that's a condo where you don't own your land per se. You own a percentage of interest in all the land that your development is on. So you might see a 0 there, but you're still going to have a land value. Moving down, story height can be very important. We're not perfect here, and we'll admit that. So always take a look at the pictures. Pictures are important. You know, if it looks like a 2-story house and this says 1-story, it might be a property that has a 1-story and a 2-story area. And this is driven by what's in a particular field within our system. So if you have questions about that, contact your assessor and ask and make sure that the information is accurate. We have information as well here about some of the various characteristics of the property. So let me just make a quick point here. You want to have similar sizes. If you look at the appraisal industry, they usually say, hey, plus or minus 25%. You want to have properties that are similar in size. You can adjust for a difference in bathrooms pretty easily. But if a property becomes too dissimilar in size, it might not really be a comparable at all. So make sure that they're very similar in size. And the rest of the information that you're looking at here, such as basements, that can be adjusted for, finishing in the basement, which in Warren Township will show here under rec room. And then we've got attached garages, detached garages. One thing that you might want to go back and look at a sketch for is enclosed frame porches do not always populate on this grid. So there's some exceptions, but most of the information will show up here. Once you've determined that these are good comparable properties, for the purpose of a market approach, you're going to look at your total market value and your total market value per square foot. And then for your comparable properties, you want to look at their total sale price and their total sale price per square foot. So our analysis is not, we're not required to assess property below every single sale that ever occurred in the neighborhood. Our goal is that your assessment falls within the range of what's occurred in the neighborhood. And if you look at the sales that are selected here, we've got a low of $148.70 a square foot to a high of $179.68. The median is going to be somewhere around $167, and the subject property is actually coming pretty close to that. But remember, when we looked at the characteristics of these properties, the subject property has a basement, and these comparables are all on crawl. So more than likely, the Board of Review, when they analyze this, they're going to make some adjustment for the value added by having a basement. So they're going to say, this sold for $260, but it had a basement. We'll add X to that sale price to arrive at what would be a more likely indicated value for the subject property. And there's a lot to that, but I know we're running out of time, but I do want to also show you in regards to an equity appeal, you're typically going to be looking at the land value per square foot, as well as the building AV per square foot. So the subject property on the building is at 4964. The range is from 4220 to 5257. Well, this property, comparable number 1, has a walkout basement with a rec room and an additional bathroom. Okay, so you would anticipate that that property be assessed higher than the subject property that has a basement that's not a walkout and has a fewer bathroom. However, the other properties, these are all on crawl. So you would expect them to be significantly less per square foot than the subject property because they don't have the benefit of the basement. We are trying to be equitable with the assessed value, not equal. So there should be a range of value and you should fall within that range. There is always going to be a property that has the most features that's going to establish the high end of that range. However, if you see that they do have superior features to the other properties, that would be considered appropriate. So that's how you can analyze that information. And our next step now is, let's say you took a look at this and you're like, we need to appeal. This is not making sense. There have been some significantly lower sales in my neighborhood. Well, we're going to walk through how to do that. You can find this on our website, and I just put a link in the chat box so you can hop on there immediately. We spent a lot of time on this. This was the whole office was involved in making sure that this was as user-friendly as possible. This guide to how to file an appeal using Smartfile. As always, we recommend reading the Lake County Board of Review rules prior to filing an appeal, or at least reading the portion of the rules that pertain to the appeal that you're filing. So, what are your reasons for filing an appeal? The characteristics of your property are incorrect. You purchased it recently for less than the assessment. Now, that's kind of a sure thing. It's like if you had a qualified sale, which means it met the definition of market value, there was no distress, within 1 year of the lien date, so all of 2022 and all of 2023, you can file an appeal based on your purchase price of your property, and you'll need to include the closing disclosure or settlement statement. If your sale price is outside of that time frame, don't put all your eggs in that basket. Even if you think your property is still worth what you bought it for, like in late 2021, at least send in some additional comparable property sales, because that's not in the board review rules. You're not in the time frame. So don't, and if you file based on your sale and your sale doesn't meet the guidelines, then your appeal just stalls. So back that up with other information. If you feel that your assessment, that you've been treated unfairly in terms of how your assessment stacks up with other assessments, or in terms of the methodology used to value your property versus other properties, that would be an equity appeal. Matters of law we're not going to cover today. And then fair cash value, that could be looking at comparable sales, or if you had a recent appraisal on your property that's below the current assessment. So those are the reasons for appeal. And let me walk you through how to do it. So you'll create an account or use a guest login in the Smartfile program. And we walk through this with the instructions. This can be used to file exemptions, address changes. Holly was really excited about that when that happened, right?
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was a good one. But for this purpose today, we're going to look at an assessment appeal. So it's this second box. So the first thing you'll do is select that box. Now, everything that I'm telling you, the theory behind analyzing sales and equity, that remains the same. The systems used for Cuba, Gila, Grant, Libertyville, or Vernon are completely different. So you'll need to talk to your township assessor if you're in one of those townships and they are still open for appeal. If you click begin filing, I suggest having the information about your PIN number before you get to this part. You've already researched your property to determine that you need to appeal. So pop in your PIN number, and it should pull up the address, and it lets you know when the filing period ends, and click start filing. You'll have to acknowledge this boilerplate information. Click next. And now you've got the application process. So you choose your name. And if it's not there, you can just input information. Your email address is going to populate based on your account that you created. If you're filing with a guest login, then you might have to put that information there. But I suggest creating an account. Then you put in your phone number. I'm making up a phone number. And you do not need an attorney to file an appeal on your house. An attorney is only required if you have a property that's in a business name, like an LLC. But if you're filing on your house, you do not need an attorney. So you just leave that no attorney. And then we need to know if this is your principal residence, information about whether or not it is listed for sale or sold recently. Now, this part is very important, appearance type. I never, ever, ever recommend selecting a letter hearing. And the reason why, if you spend all this time looking at your property, analyzing your property, creating an argument for an appeal, and you send it in by letter, guess what happens? Months down the line, you just get a letter in the mail back basically saying they changed it or they didn't. It gives you no information as to the logic that went into that decision, why they did, why they didn't, or why they didn't do it as much as you want to. You will not know because you did not select to have a hearing. So I typically suggest to either telephone the board or to show up in person. We've been doing it by Zoom. I think Charlie said we'll keep doing that because it, when we have to go to the county, it costs us $11 a day to park there. So it's free to sit
Zoom is
here.
good. It's good.
Yeah, it's free to sit here. The unfortunate part of this is they don't allow you to schedule it. So you send in your appeal, you tell them you want a hearing, they just schedule it. So that's why I say telephone, because it's easier to sneak away for a 15-minute phone call than it is to take a day off work or get down to the county building if the timing isn't convenient. And if they, you can always follow up with your assessor to find out what happened in the hearing, not to change the outcome, but at least in this case, the assessor will have been in there and had the hearing, so they might have insight into what happened. And if you're in our township, both Charlie and I are more than happy to have that conversation with you. We do it all the time.
Even filling out the appeal, if you're intimidated by the whole process, you can come in and we're happy to walk people through and help them file. I mean, we're like an open help center for people to come in, review their property, and if they feel like filing, we'll help them file.
Yeah. So if your property does have a factual error, you select this box. You'll choose the appropriate box. So for this case, we're going to choose factual error and recent sales comparables. Now, depending on what you've selected, you'll be inputting either assessed value or market value. Just remember that assessed value is 1/3 of market value. We have step-by-step instructions in our appeal guide. Let me see if I can find that page, kind of showing you, hey, you're going to have to separate land, building, and total value, and here's how you would input that. So if you get to that point, check out the guide, and it's going to give you information on doing that. So this is market value. So I'm going to leave the land the same, and then I'm going to say I want the building value lowered to 200,000. Click calculate, and then this is going to show you what you're requesting. So it's at 272. We are requesting 231,704. I know it can be difficult to determine. You might feel that you're too high, but you might not really know what that number should be. I think it's best to think of this in terms of a range of values and what would be reasonable. So one thought would be, well, ask for the low end of your range, and that's something you can absolutely do. However, if your request is reasonable, when we review it at the township level, if we look at evidence and we look at a request that we think is reasonable and is appropriate, we may agree with you and you have the opportunity to avoid the hearing altogether. So, two different ways to look at that. But if you're unsure, think of it in terms of a range, and then instead of trying to find a perfect number, think of it in terms of a range. That's my best word of advice. If your property has like a lot that has a different PIN number, you can add that information here. Now, appeal detail, you only have to do stuff on this page if you think a characteristic of your property is incorrect. And we're going to say we don't have a garage, and say I don't have a garage. And it's helpful that you give us a little bit of information here, because what we're going to do is we're going to run a report, and everything that says a characteristic is incorrect, we're going to reach out to you, and if necessary, set up a field visit so that we can get all of that part of the process figured out before you have your hearing. So if we need to say, oh, there's no garage, the value should be $10,000 lower, that's already established by the time you get to the hearing. The Board of Review can't change your property record card, so you do need to deal with your township assessor if you think there's an error in characteristics. Now, comparable selection. Now, you can utilize the search application within Smartfile, and we have information in our guide about doing so. Just remember, if you're not getting results, you might need to exclude some of the pre-populated search criteria that shows up on the website. In order to find comparable sales, you'll click Show Hide, and then click January, 2022 if you want. Once you've got January 2022, you don't have to put the 2. Click Find Comparables. If you don't put the sale in there, it will pull all the properties so you can compare assessments. Then hit Control and select the ones that you want. They'll be highlighted in blue. Once you've done that, you have to click Add Selected Parcels. And you know you've got it when you see them listed below. And then if you don't like one, you can remove it by clicking this button. And then you get to the next page. And now you're going to get a different grid than you had before. Now here's a shortcut. And here's what I like to do. So you already, where did we go? You already did all your analysis, and you already know that you like these comparable properties. So I'm just going to copy this PIN number, and I'm going to go back to my appeal form, and I'm just going to paste that PIN number in here and get that property added right to my appeal by PIN number. If you search comparable sales any other way, all you need to add them to your grid is the PIN number, and you can add them right here from the comparable display screen. And then if you don't like it, you've got one in there and you're like, oh, I didn't mean that one, or I entered the PIN number incorrectly, hit this and it disappears. It's gone.
What's the maximum properties you could put in the comparables grid?
That's a good question. I recommend don't hit the max for a number of reasons. If it's an equity case, I can see you needing significant number of comparables. But if it's a market value case, you want to use your best comparables, and you need to have at least 3. I think you can do 10, but it becomes really difficult for the Board of Review to analyze if you put too many comparables on one grid. Now, another thing that you could do, an alternative way, is if you print these and save them to PDF, or print them and scan them in, you could, for example, have 2 grids with different comps from this screen, and you could add them to your appeal under attachments. So recent sales equity assessment grid, you can add those right here. This is where you would add an appraisal. If you're sending an appraisal, make sure that you include the entire appraisal, every single page. We know it's a lot of pages, but the entire appraisal should be included. If you have a recent purchase price, you'll see that they're asking for the settlement statement or closing disclosure to be added here. And if you have pictures or something that you want to include with your factual error appeal, you can add those here. And then finally, you have to pop your name in here and click submit. Now, don't forget to click submit. Let's say you get to this point and you don't do it, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I sent it in, or I couldn't find it. I went out, my computer died, the internet went out, and I come back in. I did all this work. Well, if you created an account, if you click My Filings, you can actually go in here and see the filings that you didn't submit. The other thing that I would suggest before you submit it is print your draft filing. A lot of people go in and they file their appeal, and then when they call in for the hearing, they've kind of forgotten, they've forgotten what their comps were. If you click print draft, you'll be able to see your comparison grid. So once you do all this, oops, don't look at that. She warned me about this. You'll click submit here, and then your appeal is filed. So I see some questions in the chat box. Let's take a quick look.
Yeah, that's a good one with the basement. So the finished basements ones will price higher. And that is a problem of people finishing their basements if we don't have it as finished. So you'll see that a lot of times where they'll be like, I've been in my neighbor's finished basement. We'll get copies of the building permits and we'll go out there and check, add that finished basement. Or we'll check listings and the MLS and we'll pick up finished basements that way. But there are a lot of finished basements that aren't the assessor doesn't have. So it does happen.
It does happen. Another question that we had in the chat box was regarding that January 1st. So the board review will consider sales closings that went past January 1st. We just didn't. Charlie, you might have answered that already. Exemptions, best with exemptions, if you're in our township, give us a call your township assessor, and have them walk through each exemption so you can find out which ones you qualify for. If you come in our office, that's what we'll do. We'll walk through, we'll let you know what you need. If you think some of them are going to apply to you, if your property is the only sale in the neighborhood in the last 3 years, you're going to need to expand your search parameters as necessary. If you're still not able to find anything, I'd suggest talking to your township assessor. They could give you a little bit of guidance. You might not have a direct comparable, but you might be able to bracket your value with the property that's a little nicer, a little lower, and then that can kind of give you a range of where you should fall. So that just comes with, there's a lot of experience required to get to that point. So if you have a unique property and you're struggling, I recommend talking to your township assessor, letting them know also why you feel the current value isn't appropriate. If I didn't answer a question.
Yeah, I think for the blue notices, I believe you can contact the Chief County Assessment Office and they will reprint you another one.
So I want to thank everyone for their patience. I did tell everyone who put a question in the chat that we are holding them towards the end so we can have a nice clean recording. I also want to thank in our viewership, we have from the clerk's office, Chris Lopez, who does all the tax levy filing. So we did have a couple questions in the chat. I phoned a friend by typing into the Microsoft Teams. We are all workaholics and we're at past work time. But he answered the question so there was a question that was, is there a limit to a school levy? And the answer for this year is 5%. Now that the amount that any taxing body can levy is decided by the Illinois Department of Revenue, and it is posted on a memo on their page. So for more information on that, either contact the clerk's office or visit the Illinois Department of Revenue website. But there is kind of a cap, and if any taxing bodies want to go over that, they do have to have a truth in taxation public hearing. So it doesn't just happen.
And if you're in Warren Township, we have all of that information already put together at our fingertips. And Lake County is subject to the property tax extension limitation law, and we can give you more information about that in our office and show you what it's been historically. Charlie's been tracking it for years, and there's no limit on the number of appeals that you can file. You can file every year. Now, just be careful. It is not often that this would happen, but when you file, you are opening your property up. You are potentially opening it up to an increase.
It can go up.
It's not something that happens often. It would need to be a case of a property being egregiously underassessed, but it has happened. So if you look at it and you feel like your property is fair, but you're like, oh, I might as well try, probably I would advise you against moving forward with that mindset, because there is a risk that it gets increased, specifically if you just purchased it for more than the assessment.
Yeah, if you had a 2020 or 22 or 23 sale and your assessments below that, definitely do not file.
Do
Okay,
not
so
file a
Appeal.
market appeal.
Correct, correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a question in the chat that what's the tax levy value for this year? And Chris from the clerk's office has answered that districts have until the last Tuesday of December to submit their levies, so the districts have not done so yet. It is for any of the people who hopped on late. This was streaming live to Facebook. I've shared the link in the chat in our Zoom, so you can go ahead and bookmark it and watch any part that you have missed. All the taxing bodies have until the last Tuesday of December to submit how much they're asking for in order for that to compilate on like next year's tax bill.
Now, just a couple things in closing. As Charlie said, open door policy in the Warren Township Assessor's office. But if you're coming in, you have questions on exemptions, I'm probably not. Let me be honest, that's not my specialty. I can help you, but we actually have some individuals in our office who are much better with exemption applications. We have Alex, we have Bertha, we have Tiff. And then in terms of reviewing your assessment, Alex, Jamie, Charlie, and myself, we can all do it. We do have a Spanish-speaking individual in our office. In addition to that, we have the language line, which even facilitates communicating in sign language, utilizing the iPad. So, you know, don't hesitate to come in. We take our role as public servants very seriously. It doesn't mean that you're always going to be happy with what we have to say, but we will do our best to help you understand the process and to make sure that you clearly understand what your rights are and what you have in your wheelhouse in terms of filing an appeal and how to do so.
I also want to add that not only in the chat on our Zoom, but also on Facebook, we have shared the contact your local township assessor contact info as well. There are a couple of you that had some specific questions pertaining to your exact house. And just because, you know, we want to keep it a clean recording and there are 51 participants, we direct you to contact your local assessor for things that are specific to your home, just so everyone else doesn't hear about the exact details of your home.
One additional thing, I know I did that already, but one more, I promise, is the last one, is that the appeal guide will work for, would work for every property. So even if you're in one of the townships that isn't using the same software, you still have to file an appeal using Smartfile. So the guide that we created that's on our website, it would work for you as well. And I would much rather deal with homeowners. To answer the question was, are you lawyer friendly or would you rather deal with homeowners?
We will deal with both, but yeah.
That's just true. I'll deal with anyone, but I prefer to talk to my neighbors. That's, you know, I live here, I work here, I love our township. I love this industry. I know it's difficult. We're really, really doing our best. Something that's not fun. And, you know, we live here, we work here, we're part of your community. That's one of the things that's really great about having a local township assessor.
So if you can clarify, I have two rapid fire questions. So one person was asking what counts as a half bathroom versus
that would be a
bathroom?
sink and a toilet. And then the full bath is gonna have, you know, your sink and shower combo, or sink and separate, or shower and separate tub would be like a 5 fixture, 2 sinks, tub, shower, and bath. Yeah, so those would be your fulls.
And then there's a question that is anything split level, is the downstairs considered a basement or not a basement? Again, I think earlier you talked about grade, right? Is that what it is?
That's considered a lower
level.
Okay.
So it's not included in the AGLA or the square footage of the property. A lower level is valued more than a basement, but less than above grade area. And there is a value attached to whether or not it's finished. It's just not as big of a value as area that's above grade. A fixture is like the hole the water goes in and out, is the best way I can explain that.
Exact hole.
So like a sink, an individual sink is going to be a fixture. So like if you have a double sink, that's 2 fixtures.
I have a question about that fixtures. If based on the hotels that have like the ones that shoot water at you and have the rain on top, is this 1, or is this like 6 holes plus 1, so it's 7 fixtures?
It's like,
We
The-
didn't
the-
practice this question. Maybe I
like,
stuffed
if
this
you
one.
have like a stand-up, you know, the standard tub with the shower in it, that would be just 1 fixture. But if you have a separate tub with the shower, that would be 2 fixtures.
I
And a
see.
toilet is a fixture. Like if you had like a bidet, that would be a fixture. If you have an extra kitchen sink in your basement, that's a fixture. A bar sink is a fixture. A shower is a fixture. An extra laundry tub would be a fixture.
Interesting.
Mhm.
We don't, in some jurisdictions are now collecting like pasta arms as fixtures. We have not started to do that.
Did you
it
say pasta arms?
Yeah, it's
Like
the,
fusilli, Jerry? Could you
it is
explain what's a
the,
pasta?
it's the water fixture that moves to the side, like over the stove.
Oh, it fills
Swings
a
out. It's called
pot.
a pasta
Yes.
arm. I didn't make it up. It's a thing.
It's like
Um,
on the wall and it goes out and it fills
Yeah.
pots full of water. Yes.
I
Okay.
teach
that's
this
what-
stuff throughout the state, so I try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in other areas.
She
So
does.
some jurisdictions they're collecting as a pot filler. Okay, maybe I didn't have the right name for it. Thank you, Edith. But yes, sometimes they're collecting that. We haven't yet made that. We are not doing that in our township, but every township, they have to look at the makeup of the properties that they're valuing. And there are going to be differences in the different communities based on what's driving value and what it looks like. So that's what's really great about having your local township assessor, is you become intimately familiar with your neighborhood, the market, and what's occurring in your area.
So there's a lot of great
Thank
feedback.
you.
A lot of positive feedback. It's been a great presentation. Thanks for putting this together. Very informative. So I'd like to wrap it up. Just so that I give you back your time. I know we've worked a full day and we're here on extended overtime in sports, as they would call it, doing this, but it means so much to have this transparency, to have this free conversation and knowledge sharing. So I'm
I
checking
probably
the
should have
face-
called it more than you ever wanted to know about your assessment.
Yeah. That'll be next year's
Chesney just
title.
doesn't teach in the state, she teaches international or throughout the country, you know, so she does a great job, so.
No, Chesney
We're
was
lucky to
great.
have her here,
Charlie,
Lauren.
you were great too.
Yeah, I have the best boss.
And Holly, thank you so much for setting this up, this was great.
Yeah, thank you, Holly.
Yeah, I appreciate. So I'm checking the Facebook and there aren't any questions over there. We've checked the Zoom ones and answered as much as we can. And the ones that were specific, I've directed by direct message that they contact their township assessors. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I will release us nice at the 1.5 hour mark. Have a nice night. Bye.
Thank you.